The One Piece community is one of, if not the biggest anime community on the internet, with millions of fans across the world celebrating one of the greatest stories ever told in manga history. Unfortunately, if you have spent any time online, you know the ugly truth. The One Piece fandom is kind of a mess right now. What used to be a space full of creativity and shared passion for a story has turned into something toxic, aggressive, and flat out exhausting, at least for me and for a lot of fans out there. Which is why in this video, I'll be talking about the disappointing current state of the One Piece community, why it really matters, and what we can all do to fix it. Okay, so I'll start off by talking about what is probably the biggest problem that I have seen online. Whenever anyone, and I mean anyone, shares an unpopular opinion in any social media platform like YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, or whatever else, they will always have replies that not only disagree with them completely, but also insult and belittle them harshly. This is especially prevalent when the unpopular opinion is about a popular character like Zoro, Sanji, Shanks, Mihawk, or anyone else really. We have genuinely reached a point where normal conversations become complete battlegrounds in war, where if you even slightly critique a character, people treat it like a direct attack on their soul and their family. Now, let's get one thing clear here. Every community will always have disagreements, and that's completely fine. The beauty of One Piece is that we are able to share our own interpretations of the characters and the story. The problem comes when you start being disrespectful in your arguments. Of course, every community will always have the bad apples, but I feel like One Piece's community specifically has a disproportionately big amount of them. A good example of this kind of problem that I saw recently was on Twitter. There's this popular One Piece YouTuber you might have heard of called Melon-T, who recently posted a TikTok and a YouTube short that talks about how Zoro is not the first mate of the Straw Hat Pirates. The video itself was purely informative and was not attacking anyone in any way. But of course, since it's an unpopular opinion about Zoro, a good portion of his fans got a bit mad. One response to her video that caught my attention was from this user on Twitter that says, "That's funny, you're still pushing 30 and can't comprehend the nuance between an unofficial role and a title or status." This tweet really set me off because first of all, it's under one of Melon-T's tweets that has absolutely nothing to do with Zoro being first mate at all. It was just talking about how Sanji was being really thoughtful by giving Zoro something to do during the Skypiea arc. Second of all, and the one that matters more here, this is simply a disrespectful tweet. If they had said something along the lines of, "I disagree with your stance about Zoro not being first mate and here's why," I wouldn't be making this video, because that's a perfectly fine response. But no, of course they had to insult Melon-T by saying that she's pushing 30. Some of you might say that this is not that bad of an insult, but I personally disagree. There is literally no reason for them to say this, yet they did anyway. This tweet honestly sums up how I feel about this whole situation. You just took a heartwarming post, made it up about some made-up beef, provided evidence contrary to your claims, and even brought up Mel's age. You tried to bring up her age to make her look immature, and it only made you look ignorant and like a little kid throwing a tantrum. I've seen this kind of behavior happening everywhere on social media, and it's really sad to see this kind of thing still happening today in our community. I myself have even experienced this kind of toxicity from these fans. About 2 months ago, I made this video called "Why Roronoa Zoro is Not Admiral Level Yet," which blew up and got 4,000 views and 250 comments. A good amount of those comments are positive and respectful, and if any of you are watching right now, thank you for leaving positive comments, it really means a lot to me. But unfortunately, there are also some comments that are not exactly kind and respectful. If any of you are watching this right now, I'm not mad at any of you. Once again, the beauty of One Piece is that we are able to share our own opinions about its characters, but please, all I ask of you is just to be respectful. If you disagree and think Zoro is Admiral level or beyond, that's completely fine as long as you make your comment respectful. One last thing that I want to say is that it's completely fine for people to share an unpopular opinion about your favorite character. If you start insulting someone because they said your favorite character is not the second in command of their crew, you should really reevaluate how you behave online. Because the thing is, this ultimately doesn't even matter at all. Zoro being first mate or not has nothing to do with One Piece's story and characters. Anyway, before I get more heated, let's move on to the second topic, which is the complete and utter obsession with the power scaling of One Piece. Instead of appreciating the story or a character's development emotionally or spiritually, a lot of fans are locked into the question of who's stronger than who, whether it's Zoro versus Sanji, Katakuri versus King, Mihawk versus Shanks, or really any other matchup. Now, I'll admit I have fallen into this pitfall of only caring about power scaling myself by making the aforementioned Zoro video, but since then I've started to realize that power scaling really doesn't matter at the end of the day, and yet so many people still care about it way too much. It gets to a point where characters aren't even considered people anymore. They're just tools used to display the power hierarchies within the story. Who solos who becomes more important than what the character actually represents in One Piece. One great example of this is how the scene of Sanji crying in Whole Cake Island isn't viewed as emotional storytelling. Instead, it's seen as proof that he's weak in some way. To me, it honestly sounds like Vince McJudge is saying these kinds of words because that's exactly the man that he is, a ruthless overlord who really only cares about power. This judge-like mentality of treating everybody as a weapon strips away everything that makes One Piece such a great story in the first place, being the emotion, the heart, and the humanity of it all. It turns the community into a spreadsheet of made-up numbers instead of a community that celebrates a legendary story. Not everything has to be power-scaled, guys. Sometimes we can just appreciate One Piece for what it is, a brilliant story. The last thing that I want to talk about is the absolutely insane gatekeeping. There's a whole chunk of the community that treats One Piece like some exclusive private club. Very often do I see comments like, "Oh, you haven't caught up to the manga? Your opinion's completely invalid then." Or, "You watched the anime? Well, that doesn't count because the manga is the source material." Or, "You won't understand because you don't read the manga." I could go on, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Instead of welcoming new people into One Piece, the community very often pushes them away. We mock people for asking questions, we shame them for getting things wrong. How does that represent the spirit and message of One Piece? Oda's message is about unity, equality, freedom, and chasing your dreams, not bullying someone because they forgot which arc Jinbei first appeared in. To conclude this section of the video, the biggest problems with One Piece's community are the fact that the fandom is simply way too toxic with their responses to posts that don't align with their own opinions, as well as to newer fans who are trying to get into the series. A lot of fans are also way too obsessed with power scaling to the point where they completely ignore the series' deeper themes of adventure, freedom, and camaraderie. Now, with all that being said, why does this even matter in the first place? Am I just saying these things to make myself feel better? No, because this impacts the community in so many ways. First of all, as I mentioned before, this can really discourage newer fans from investing time into the series. If we want this community to grow and prosper, we need to treat people with kindness and respect so that newer fans can feel like they can explore the series without the risk of being judged. Second of all, the fandom can easily be misrepresented by the bad apples. The vocal minority of toxic individuals can overshadow the vast majority of respectful and passionate fans, which creates a negative perception of the community as a whole. And lastly, discussions that get really toxic can harm the mental health of the fans of the series, especially those that are on the younger side. One Piece is a shonen after all, which means that it will naturally have a younger fan base. Constant exposure to negativity and online harassment can be detrimental to the mental well-being of not just the younger fans, but everyone as a whole. So, how can we improve as a community? Well, there's a couple things we can do. Firstly, we need to prioritize respect when arguing with other fans. I know it sounds super cliche, but before you reply to someone, try to think to yourself, am I being respectful or am I just trying to be mean? If it's the latter, then try to rephrase your argument in a more respectful way. Also, Instead of jumping to insults and personal attacks as soon as someone disagrees, just focus on the actual topic being discussed. That creates a much healthier environment for arguing. Secondly, we need to respect other people's opinions. In accordance with my previous point, when someone shares an opinion that we disagree with, we need to respect their opinion. Not everyone has to like your favorite character, and that's okay. Criticism is not hate, and debate doesn't mean war. Thirdly, we need to focus on the story itself instead of just the power levels. One Piece isn't just about who's the strongest character, and it never has been. It's about freedom, about loyalty, dreams, tragedy, hope, will. We can talk about and celebrate the emotions and the character development, not just about how character A can beat character B with no difficulty or something like that. And finally, the most important thing that we need to do is to support the newer fans that are just getting their feet wet in the series. We need to help people fall in love with the series the way we did, instead of pushing them away by answering their questions, recommending great movies and other One Piece related media, share theories about what might happen next, and so many more. We need to be the reason someone sticks around, because remember, this series is 1,000 episodes and chapters long, and not everyone has that kind of time or dedication. Now, with all that being said, the One Piece fandom still has some of the most creative, passionate, loyal, and witty fans in the world, and I still do truly love this community. From the amazing fan theories to the incredible fan art, the brilliant video essays on YouTube, and the hilarious memes, we have so much to be proud of. But at the same time, we need to do better. The toxicity and gatekeeping is not what One Piece is about, and it never has been. But I personally believe in this community. Just like the Straw Hats, we've been through a lot together, and I believe we can build a community that feels just like them. A community that accepts differences, one that respects boundaries, and one that spreads the word of the story we all know and love in a positive and kind manner. We can make this community great again, but it has to start with us and our willingness to change. Thanks for watching.